Today, maybe we could reconstruct the pyramid, but it would be so extremely expensive that no company would do such a thing. You know, 2.5 million stone blocks fit together exactly in the way they have done it there, with all these rooms. And there are not only the 3 rooms, the Queen's Chamber, the King's Chamber, the chamber under the pyramid. There are many other rooms. That all is really complicated, too complicated for a pharaoh like Cheops. By the way, it is not my opinion that the extraterrestrials constructed the pyramid. No, it is the humans who did it. All the dirty work the humans made. But the engineering, the planning comes from the extraterrestrials. But the work itself was done by us. So the Great Pyramid of Egypt, the big one and the 2 smaller ones, they exist for mankind since eternity. The Great Pyramid is one of the miracles of the world. When the historians arrived in Egypt some 2,000 years ago, the Great Pyramid was already there. All the historians of the past were standing before the Great Pyramid. It was a gigantic monument for mankind. That's why all the questions come up. Who did it? Why? For what purpose exactly? I again suggest they did it for the gods. The pyramid, the Great Pyramid, was not a tomb. They never found a grave inside, not the grave of Cheops at all. So it was a heritage for the future of mankind. Inside the Great Pyramid, we will probably sooner or later find books which tell us how it was some long, long time before the Great Flood. Nobody knows when the Great Flood was, but at least 5,000–6,000 years in the past. Directly under the Great Pyramid is a room which is known since eternity. It's called the unfinished chamber. The unfinished chamber, you have a shaft going down, and the shaft is 119 meters long. You have to go down really on your knees because it's only about 1 meter high. And you come to the unfinished chamber. There are no writings, no chiselings, nothing. It's just primitive out of the rock. No one understands why this unfinished chamber is there. It makes no sense. Herodotus, the Greek historian who was there around 450 BC, he said that under the pyramid there is a lake, a sea, and the sea has absolutely clear water. And in the water there is a sarcophagus with the remains or with some gifts of the god Osiris. One has to know Osiris is the oldest god in Egypt. And Osiris is the same thing which in the firmament is Orion. So Orion and Osiris is the same, even in writing, in hieroglyphics, it's always the same. Now, Herodotus, the Greek historian, says, under the pyramid is a lake with clear water and a sarcophagus with some gifts of Osiris. Archaeologists never took this for true. They said, what is Herodotus telling us? It is impossible that under the pyramid there is a lake, because the pyramid finally is in the Sahara desert. There's no water, nothing. Some years ago, they found, in fact, the lake under the pyramid. And of course, I was down there. We were climbing down there. First, you come into a small room and there are stairs, 2 stairs. Now you go down there, right down in the shaft. The shaft is big enough for 2 ladders. Of course, the ladders are from our days. Then you come to a small room which is chiseled out of the rock, inside the rock. And there you see 7 niches. but only in 2 niches are some sarcophaguses. One is made out of black basalt. Basalt is volcanic stone. There are no volcanoes nearby. We don't know why they had to use basalt sarcophagus, and the other one is granite. Now from this point, you again go deeper, another shaft, into the rock. Now the first shaft was as large enough for 2 ladders. The second shaft has only room for 1 ladder. It's smaller. You have to really, with your elbows, you touch the walls. Then you come under the place, you make a right angle, and you see, in fact, a lake. It's not a big lake, it's some sort of creek with absolutely clear water. And in the water, there is a sarcophagus. We measured the sarcophagus, we made photographs of the sarcophagus. So the Greek writer, historian, was right. He was correct saying that there is a lake under there. Now, modern, today's archaeologists, I asked, what did you find in the sarcophagus? They told me nothing. Now, I don't know if this is the truth or not. But the fact is, the Greek historian Herodotus told us about a lake under the pyramid, and he was right. All through archaeology for centuries said, this is impossible. The same Greek historian said that the gods came down 11,240 years ago. Now archaeologists do again not accept the 11,240 years ago, because history of Egypt is roughly 3,000 years BC, but not 11,000 years BC. They disagree with Herodotus, but I suggest Herodotus is right, and we are wrong. The pyramid must be much, much older, was constructed before the Great Flood by a technology which Enoch had from the extraterrestrials. The planning, the engineering planning came from the extraterrestrials. Some of the tools came from the extraterrestrials. The dirty work was done by us, by the humans. In my opinion, the pyramid was a kind of treasure. A treasure created before the Great Flood, for the humans after the Great Flood, for us. Again, in this connection, I have to come back to Enoch. Enoch is the 7th patriarch before the Great Flood. Enoch learned the language of the extraterrestrials. He was in their spaceship. He was taught by them. Before Enoch left our planet Earth, he went back to Earth again to say goodbye to all his children and his wife. He had many wives at that time. And he met his son Methuselah, the same biblical Methuselah which becomes roughly 900 years old. And he gives Methuselah all his writings. There must be about 300 books, which Enoch, because we have one book of Enoch, and there he says, I wrote about 300 books. He gave these 300 books to his son Methuselah with the order, keep the books carefully for the generation after the Great Flood. They knew that the Great Flood was coming. They construct the pyramid. They knew the pyramid would survive the Great Flood. And in the pyramid, we will find some libraries. Sooner or later, with our modern technology, we will find the library of Enoch. And then we have the shock of the gods again, because Enoch tells us what really went on at that time before the Great Flood. Obviously, the pyramids were something like artificial mountains. They felt to be nearer to the gods. In my opinion, the pyramid in Egypt, the big one, Cheops pyramid, is a treasure. Inside, we will find information, writings of the time before the Great Flood. One of my friends, Robert Bauval, who is a brilliant historian, he suggested that the 3 pyramids in Egypt are linked with the belt of Orion. And the god Osiris is the same as Orion. So I could absolutely agree with Robert Bauval. And it makes sense. Orion is Osiris. Now Orion's wife was Isis. Again, Isis is Sirius. So we have Orion and we have Sirius on the star, on the heaven. Now we have some shafts in the Great Pyramid. And on certain dates, I guess it's March 21st. These two shafts point on one side to the belt of Orion, and on the other side to the star of Sirius, which makes sense. It has all to do with astronomy, and astronomy again has to do with the gods. And the gods, of course, were visitors from outer space. There is no way out because they were teachers. They taught our ancestors in astronomy, in mathematics. They were the teachers from heaven. I hope that we find, at least in the Great Pyramid in Egypt, writings, a whole library, the library of the so-called prophet Enoch, which was living before the Great Flood, and which gave the order to his son Methuselah, construct the building to hide all these books written by your father's hand. That's my suggestion. It's time that we humans learn to understand that the teachers of the past were the gods, and the gods were extraterrestrials. I'm Erich von Däniken. Join me next time on Beyond the Legends.